At dawn one morning, in a quiet genetics lab at a university, a solitary printout sat on an analyst's desk. The data glowing on the computer screen revealed something unsettling. A new DNA test, associated with a man tracing Cherokee ancestry, showed no match to any known human population. No similarity to other Native American profiles, no link to European or Asian lineages, nothing. It was an anomaly so stark that the researcher could hardly believe her eyes. In principle, it should have been impossible. Cherokee DNA, like that of any other group, should share markers with known populations. The Cherokee are one of the most studied Native American peoples. Their genetic signatures usually fit within the established framework of Native ancestry. DNA from a Cherokee descendant would normally contain haplogroups that scientists recognize and have recorded in global databases. Instead, this result was a blank slate. To understand why this result was so shocking, consider the story of the Cherokee. For millennia, their world lay in the forests and mountains of the American Southeast. Picture a misty autumn morning in the Smoky Mountains. The ridges stretch southward, clad in trees of red and gold. Waterfalls carve through the valleys. These landscapes were Cherokee country for generations. Western North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, the high valleys of northern Georgia. Here the Cherokee made their home. For early explorers and settlers, the Cherokee people seemed to be deep southern mountain folk. Those who met them in the 16th and 17th centuries assumed they had always been there. The Cherokee built towns and farmed the hills, so it seemed natural. Their traditions and graves were rooted in the soil. But that comforting story took a strange turn when scholars examined the language. Cherokee is an Iroquoian language, yet other Iroquoian languages belong to tribes far to the north and east. The Mohawk, Seneca, Oneida, and Tuscarora lived in the Great Lakes region and upstate New York. The Cherokee sat alone in the Deep South, speaking a tongue that seemed out of place. Scholars noticed this early on. By the 19th century, questions were already being asked. How did an Iroquoian-speaking people come to live in the Appalachian Mountains? For generations, the answer remained vague. Perhaps there had been a prehistoric migration from the north, perhaps an ancient split sent one group southward millennia ago. The tools to resolve these ideas simply did not exist. Archaeologists could map settlements, pottery styles, and mound sites, showing Cherokee presence back through the Pisgah and Qualla phases of the Woodland period. Linguists could estimate a rough divergence date, maybe 3,500 to 4,000 years ago, consistent with an ancient split. But neither archaeology nor linguistics could tell who moved, in what numbers, or what they carried across the miles. That changed with DNA. By the late 20th century, genetic analysis promised new clues about migrations and origins. Scientists began decoding indigenous genomes. They looked at the Cherokee alongside many other peoples. The assumption was straightforward: Cherokee DNA, whether mitochondrial, maternal, or Y chromosome, paternal, should slot into the existing picture of how the Americas were populated. Based on earlier research, most Native Americans carry 4 main maternal lineages, labeled A, B, C, and D. Many Cherokee samples indeed showed those haplogroups. Some even had haplogroup X, the unusual 5th lineage that appears mostly in the Great Lakes and among Iroquoian and Algonquian speakers. That X signal was sparse, but it tied in with the theory of a northern connection. On the whole, the genetic narrative seemed consistent with what researchers expected: a base of Asian-derived lineages with a hint of the Great Lakes. Then came our data point. A DNA test was run as part of a study of Cherokee genetics. The subject was a man with well-documented Cherokee ancestry, enrolled in the nation, and descended from Cherokee families. He had passed all the usual checks. Recorded family trees and tribal rolls confirmed his background. The lab expected standard results. Instead, the sequence that came back stunned everyone. It did not match the typical Native American haplogroups. It was not A, B, C, D, or even the rare X. Nor was it any known European or Asian haplogroup. In short, it was unlike anything they had seen in the databases. The analysts did what scientists always do. They double-checked everything. The sample was purified and rerun. The DNA data was sent to an independent lab for a blind test. Multiple sequencing methods were applied: mitochondrial full genome sequencing, Y chromosome markers, even autosomal SNP arrays. Each time, the result was the same. The tests still found no match to any reference population. The pattern was consistent and reproducible. Every analysis returned the same message: this Cherokee individual's DNA didn't align with any cluster of known peoples. The finding was now solid, not a one-off fluke. This produced deep uncertainty. In genetics, results are expected to fit patterns. To see one fall outside all known groups makes researchers sit up. Were there errors in the person's genealogy? Could this DNA belong to another relative or a sample mix-up? No, the lineage was clear. Was it contamination? The laboratory had sensitive controls and ran clean negative tests. Lab notes confirmed there was no stray DNA from any animal or technician. Eventually, the only conclusion was that this man's Cherokee heritage included a component that simply wasn't in the books. Such a discovery had profound implications. We like to think we know where people come from, but this said otherwise. Perhaps an ancient branch of Cherokee history had been hidden until now. It raised questions. Could there have been people who once lived in the Appalachians and later vanished from the record? Was it possible that the Cherokee inherited DNA from a group of people that science has not cataloged? The finding hinted that our map of human migration might have a missing piece. The historical context quickly came to mind. After all, the Cherokee had been the most populous tribe in the southeast at first European contact. Spanish explorers documented their towns in the 1500s. English colonies traded with them in the 1700s. Historians have mapped their villages, Chota, Tanasi, Nikwasi, and noted their ties to the Mississippian mound-building world. The Cherokee participated in a broad pre-colonial network with maize agriculture and mound structures linking them to other cultures. By the late 18th century, they had large towns and even a written syllabary. Anthropologists in the 19th and 20th centuries classified the Cherokee as part of the Iroquoian family. Their neighbors, the Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, spoke Muskogean languages and were considered part of the southern cultural sphere. Many scholars assumed that if the Cherokee spoke Iroquoian, they might have migrated down from the north at some point in prehistory. Others simply left them as an isolated southern remnant with uncertain origins. But the language puzzle always lingered in the back of academic minds. Meanwhile, Cherokee oral history told a slightly different story. Tribal elders spoke of an ancestral homeland far to the north. They passed down tales of moving from a distant place in their sacred narratives. For example, the word Kidawah is remembered as a mother town or place of origin. Some versions of the legend even refer to lands around the Ohio Valley or Great Lakes. These were stories passed down through generations. They hadn't fit neatly into academic models, but now they took on new meaning in light of genetics. In the late 20th century, many Cherokee began taking commercial DNA tests for ancestry. Often the results were not surprising. Markers confirming some Native American heritage and sometimes European or African inputs, reflecting known history. Academic projects also sampled Cherokee groups under ethical protocols, expecting to confirm existing theories. The general expectation was that genetics would reaffirm what history and tradition had long said. Instead, this mysterious result confounded those expectations. Within weeks, rumors spread among geneticists. Some speculated perhaps the individual had an unknown adoption in his ancestry or a secret ancestor from outside. But his genealogical records were thorough and showed no obvious non-native forebear. Others considered technical glitches, maybe an instrument error or a mix-up. But after every plausible check, the anomaly persisted. It became clear that the mystery was real and required explanation. Faced with the anomaly, researchers considered multiple explanations. One obvious factor: reference databases are incomplete. The majority of genetic samples come from certain regions, and Native American groups are underrepresented, especially from the Southeast. It could be that this lineage appears very rarely and simply hadn't been sampled elsewhere. Perhaps centuries ago, some Cherokee women carried a unique lineage that was lost from the population except for this one descendant. Genetic drift over millennia can erase or hide lineages. Another possibility was more speculative. Maybe long ago an undocumented group migrated into the region and mixed with Cherokee ancestors, leaving no distinct archaeological culture. Contamination or lab error was another theory, but it fell short. The sequence appeared coherent and fully human, not like random stray DNA. If it were a lab mistake, the pattern would likely look chaotic or irreproducible. Instead, it was a clear, legible sequence. Every lab that sequenced the DNA saw the same story each time. The analysts even turned the idea on its head. The DNA was definitely human. If it had come from an animal or a stray molecule, it wouldn't produce a consistent human profile. But it did, every repeat. The more they looked, the clearer it became. The DNA was legitimate, not contamination, and still unexplained. Some began to entertain more exotic scenarios. Could there have been an undocumented migration? Perhaps thousands of years ago, a small band migrated into the southeast and lived isolated, later blending silently. This kind of story could fit an oral tradition of migration, but it had a problem. There was no archaeological sign of a distinct group in the Appalachians beyond known cultures. If an unknown people had lived there, unique artifacts or dwellings should have turned up. So far, none have. Without material evidence, these ideas remain speculative, but researchers kept them in mind. Another explanation came from demography. The Cherokee endured dramatic population changes after European contact. Disease, warfare, and the forced removals of the 19th century decimated their numbers. In 1838, around 16,000 Cherokee were forced west on the Trail of Tears. Roughly a quarter of them died en route. That was a severe genetic bottleneck. In population genetics, such events can drastically reshape ancestry signals. A mitochondrial lineage that was rare before could become common just because its carriers happened to survive. Conversely, a common lineage could vanish if its carriers were lost. It's possible that some obscure maternal lines persisted in the mountains only because a few women carried them through those hardships. Scientists argued privately about these ideas. Some were cautious. "Hold on," they said. "This result only covers one family line. Our conclusions would be premature." They pointed out that mitochondrial DNA traces just the maternal line. It tells nothing about a person's paternal ancestry or the full genomic picture. If this man's nuclear DNA and Y chromosome were typical Cherokee, then perhaps we're seeing just a local oddity. A person could have a Cherokee father and a Cherokee mother, yet the maternal line came from some distant ancestor. It would mean the anomaly is only one branch on the family tree. So one view was, it might simply be a quirk of the mother's side, a lineage that happened to pass down to this person, but otherwise went unnoticed. Others were more intrigued. They asked, what if this is a signal, not noise? A historian among them noted that if two lines of evidence converged like this, it deserved attention. This could be the key to a hidden chapter of history, someone whispered. They speculated it might point to something really old. Perhaps the answer lies just beyond what we know, one remarked. To them, ignoring one discrepant result risked overlooking the very surprise that could reshape the story. Meanwhile, respect for tribal authority became a factor. Cherokee leaders were consulted about how to interpret the finding. In formal meetings, they reminded researchers that DNA data must be handled with care. Tribal council members listened to presentations, and cultural advisors emphasized that no genetic result could override their ancestors' stories. The scientists agreed. Any explanation would be framed as a question, not a final verdict. No single finding could erase centuries of traditions passed down by Cherokee elders. Everyone in the room understood. The Cherokee story would be told by the Cherokee people as well as by scientists. Under the surface of the analysis, one truth became clear. Genetic evidence has limits. In effect, this incident highlighted that much of human genetic diversity is still undersampled. A laboratory can only compare a sample to what's already been cataloged. If you haven't sequenced a similar genome, you simply get no match. Every sample added to a database can change the picture, revealing connections that were hidden before. Perhaps if more Cherokee and other southeastern tribes were tested, or if century-old museum specimens were sequenced, this unusual lineage would find relatives. For now, it stands alone, reminding us that a DNA test can only explain something in terms of what is already known. In the Cherokee case, history offered no easy answer. If there once was a migrating group with this lineage, where did they come from? The Great Lakes theory already had supporters, but this could imply something different. Maybe an encounter or admixture that left only genetics behind. Or perhaps there was something even older at play. None of this could be confirmed. Scholars pointed out that many ancient sites in the Appalachian region have been eroded or remain unexcavated. Clues could be buried under later soils, undeciphered, until technology or opportunity allows. The absence of evidence was frustrating, but not necessarily final. History often keeps its secrets in silence until someone digs them up. Science had to be honest about what was known. The researchers admitted they had more questions than answers. They could not claim a sensational discovery from one odd result. In their lab notes, they wrote that this was simply a small piece of a much larger puzzle. An anomaly is not proof of a new civilization, only a clue. It reminded them to remain patient and let further research do the talking. For now, the record said, we don't know enough, and that is okay. It was a moment of humility. History is rarely written with one anomalous data point, but anomalies like this are exactly what drive us to learn more. As evening fell, the lab emptied and the machines went quiet. The lights in the work area dimmed and the DNA sequencer sat idle. Outside, the Smoky Mountains were calm. A cool breeze whispered through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Inside the tubes and hard drives lay the coded history of a human past, now silent in their cold storage. It was a moment of quiet reflection. Data were locked away, and the forest held its breath. If a Cherokee had walked those hills at dawn centuries ago, he would have known all too well that the land still had much it wasn't saying. For now, no clear answer had emerged. The Cherokee DNA anomaly became a whisper in the human story. It suggested questions. What if there were ancestors we haven't sampled? What if the Cherokee journey included encounters that left almost no trace? The anomaly itself was too subtle to shout a conclusion, but it would not go away. Perhaps future scientists will find another person with the same pattern, or perhaps an ancient burial in those Appalachian hills will yield a clue. If that happens, maybe the story will be resolved. If not, it will remain a quiet mystery, one more chapter that history has not yet written. One thing is certain, the Cherokee people continue their lives in the woods and streams of this land, speaking their stories and remembering. For now, the past keeps its secrets a little longer.